All right, Cowboys Nation, buckle up because there's a lot to unpack today. The whole conversation around George Pickens has been heating up, and I think it's time to slow things down, look at this with a clear head, and really understand what's going on inside the Dallas Cowboys organization. You know how things get online. One rumor turns into a wildfire in seconds, but when you actually break it down, the story is a little more balanced than it seems. I'm not even mad about how the Cowboys have handled things so far, because for once, it feels like they're taking a measured, strategic approach instead of reacting emotionally. Let's start from the top. The Pickens trade talk didn't just appear out of nowhere. It began with a question from a fan on a post-game show, and from there, it spiraled across social media like wildfire. Suddenly, everyone's talking about whether Dallas should move on from George Pickens, whether they should get draft capital back, and whether they can use that to rebuild the defense. But let's be real here. Trading away one of your most productive offensive weapons just to patch a struggling defense sounds like solving one problem by creating another. That's the definition of robbing Peter to pay Paul. Why would you break apart something that's working just to gamble on fixing something else? Now, don't get me wrong. The Cowboys' defense has issues. Everybody can see it. The missed tackles, the blown coverages, the lack of consistency. It's not the same dominant unit we expected it to be. But the good news is that Dallas actually has the resources to fix that without sacrificing a star receiver. They've got draft picks, they've got flexibility in cap space, and they've got time before the offseason to make those decisions count. There's a lot of noise about the Cowboys being tight on the cap, but that's not exactly true. The numbers you see floating around, a couple million here, a few million there, don't tell the whole story. When you start looking at potential restructures and extensions, suddenly things open up in a big way. Restructuring contracts for Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Osa Odigizwa, and Tyler Smith-Freeze up tens of millions. Add in potential roster moves, trimming the fat where it makes sense, and Dallas could be sitting on over $100 million in spending power next offseason. That's enough to retool a defense from the ground up without having to blow up your offensive core. So the idea of moving on from Pickens just doesn't hold up logically. The offense has been one of the few bright spots this season, and Pickens has been a huge part of that. He's meshing with Dak in ways we haven't seen from a new receiver in a long time. He's been explosive, consistent, and seems to be settling into the system perfectly. This isn't the kind of player you just ship off because you're nervous about future negotiations. Speaking of those negotiations, yes, an extension is coming. That's inevitable. Dallas has a few paths it could take. They could get a deal done now. They could use the franchise tag next offseason, or they could let things play out and revisit the situation before free agency. Letting him walk for nothing, though, would be absurd. That's not even worth discussing. What makes the current approach reasonable is that both sides seem content to wait and see. Pickens wants to prove his worth, and the Cowboys want to make sure he's a long-term fit before locking in big money. That's smart football management. Now, if someone comes out with a crazy offer, like a team calling up with a first-round pick, especially one projected high, then sure, you listen. You always listen. That's just good business. But outside of an offer that completely blows you away, there's no reason to move on from a top-5 offensive unit. You don't dismantle your strength when you've already got the assets to fix your weaknesses elsewhere. And let's talk about what an eventual deal for Pickens might look like. The market for top receivers has gone through the roof. The franchise tag for a wideout is projected around $28 million per year, and if you tag a player twice, that number jumps significantly, well into the mid-30s. That means any long-term deal will start with those numbers as the baseline. Agents know that, and they're not settling for less. Pickens' camp will likely aim for something north of $28 million a year with guaranteed money that clears $65 million. That's just where the market is right now. And honestly, he's played well enough to deserve that conversation. But here's the thing. Those numbers shouldn't scare the Cowboys. There are already multiple teams paying 2 top-tier receivers alongside a high-priced quarterback, and they're thriving. The Eagles did it. The Dolphins did it. The Bengals nearly did before they stumbled over their own management. It's not about whether you can afford it. It's about whether you're managing your money in a smart way. Dallas has more than enough flexibility to keep Dak, Lamb, and Pickens together for the long haul. And think about the chemistry on this team. Dak finally has receivers that complement each other. Pickens brings size, toughness, and that downfield threat that forces defenses to stay honest. Lamb is your route technician and volume target. That 1-2 punch gives the Cowboys offense a balance it hasn't had in years. You don't throw that away lightly. Of course, the front office will say all the usual things, talking about being smart with the salary cap, about slicing the financial pie carefully, but that's just noise. The money is there. The resources are there. The only real question is whether the Cowboys have learned from their past mistakes. Remember when they dragged out Dak's contract talks? Or when they let Amari Cooper go for pennies on the dollar? Those were self-inflicted wounds. If they've learned anything from that, they'll make sure Pickens doesn't end up in the same boat. So where does this leave us right now? Pretty much where we should be. The Cowboys aren't panicking. Pickens isn't causing drama. Both sides are keeping things professional and letting the season play out. That's what good organizations do. If he keeps performing the way he has, the conversation shifts naturally into extension talks early next year. That's how you build stability, not by making desperate trades, but by keeping your core intact and using your other resources to fix the rest. Now, I know some people still think you can't pay a quarterback and 2 elite wide receivers at the same time. They'll tell you it's not good roster building, that it limits your options. But that argument just doesn't hold up anymore. The modern NFL is built around high-powered offenses. You win games by scoring points. You need weapons, and if you already have them, the last thing you do is let them go. The Eagles proved it. The Chiefs did it differently, but with the same philosophy, and Dallas has all the tools to do it too. The reality is this isn't about whether they can afford George Pickens. They absolutely can. It's about whether they'll choose to act like the big market team they are. Jerry Jones has made it clear he loves what Pickens brings to the field. The energy, the attitude, the spark, that's the kind of player you keep around. And right now, everything we've seen from Pickens says he's bought in. He's not just producing. He's growing into a leader in that locker room. So, for now, the trade rumors are just noise. The smart move is patience. Let the season play out, evaluate where the team stands, and then make the kind of move that builds on success instead of tearing it down. That's what championship organizations do. And if Dallas wants to get back to that level, they've got to stick to this kind of discipline. Because the truth is, you don't find receivers like George Pickens every day. And when you've got one that fits this perfectly, you hold on tight and build around him. All right, so let's keep rolling, Cowboys Nation, because we're just getting into the real meat of this conversation. The question now is not whether George Pickens deserves to get paid. That part's obvious. It's how the Cowboys are going to handle it when the time comes. And if history has taught us anything, it's that this front office loves to make things dramatic. But maybe, just maybe, this time they can finally get it right. Let's look at the numbers again, because that's what drives everything in the NFL. The projected franchise tag for a top wide receiver next season is hovering around $28 million. That's your floor. If the Cowboys tag him twice, which we've seen them do before with Dak, that number jumps up into the mid-30s. And you know what agents do with that information? They take those figures, put them on the table, and say, that's our starting point. No one's taking less than the tag guarantees, because they don't have to. So if you're the Cowboys, you already know the range you're playing in. Now, Pickens' representatives aren't going to settle for a team-friendly deal. They know his value, and they know what the market looks like. The wide receiver landscape has exploded in the past few years. Guys like Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, and A.J. Brown have changed the game. If George Pickens hits the open market, you can bet multiple teams would throw serious money his way. So from a business standpoint, the Cowboys would be wise to act early rather than waiting until desperation sets in. Because once that happens, you're negotiating from a position of weakness, and that's exactly how you end up overpaying. Now, for anyone worried about how this affects the cap, let's get one thing straight. The money isn't the problem. The cap is flexible, and teams find ways to make it work every single year. What really matters is structure. Signing bonuses, guaranteed money, roster incentives. Those are the tools that turn a massive contract into something manageable. If Dallas front loads or structures the deal smartly, they could easily keep Pickens Lamb, and Dak together without crippling their roster. It's all about how creative you're willing to get with the numbers. The Cowboys have done this dance before, and it always comes down to timing. When they waited too long on Dak, it cost them more. When they got impatient with Amari Cooper, it cost them talent. When they dragged their feet on CeeDee Lamb's extension, it added unnecessary pressure. You'd think by now they've learned their lesson. If Pickens keeps producing at this level, there's no reason to delay. You get ahead of the market, you secure your playmaker, and you give your quarterback stability. That's how smart franchises operate. But here's where things get interesting. Even if Dallas uses the tag on Pickens as a temporary measure, it doesn't have to be a negative move. Sometimes teams tag players just to buy themselves more time for long-term negotiations. The key is communication. If Pickens and his camp know the Cowboys are serious about a multi-year deal, that tag won't cause friction. It becomes a bridge rather than a wall. The problem only arises when teams use the tag as an excuse to avoid real negotiations. And that's where Dallas has stumbled before. Now let's say, hypothetically, that things go perfectly. Pickens finishes the season strong, chemistry with Dak keeps building, and both sides head into the offseason with positive momentum. The Cowboys could structure a deal in the $30 million per year range with around $70 million guaranteed. That would put him right at the edge of the top 10 highest paid receivers, which is fair considering his trajectory. And as the cap continues to rise, which it will, that deal will look more and more team-friendly over time. That's the magic of getting things done early. Jerry Jones has already hinted at how much he values Pickens. You can tell in the way he talks about him. The energy, the explosiveness, the confidence. He's not just another player. He's a face of the franchise in the making. And Jerry's always had a soft spot for those types of guys. The Cowboys don't draft and trade for stars just to let them walk out the door. That's not how this organization works when it's thinking clearly. And remember, paying your stars doesn't mean you can't build a complete team. It just means you have to be more disciplined with the rest of your roster. The Cowboys have a lot of young, affordable players under contract, and that's the kind of foundation that allows you to pay your elite talent. Plus, with 2 first-round picks in the next 2 drafts and tons of cap flexibility, the window to build a contender is wide open. The key is not panicking, not blowing it up because one side of the ball is struggling. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Dallas Cowboys. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. In a move that has sent shockwaves through the NFL world, rumors are swirling that the Dallas Cowboys have somehow pulled off one of the most unexpected trades of the season. Wide receiver Terry McLaurin from the Washington Commanders. Sources close to the situation suggest that discussions have been intense behind closed doors, and while nothing has been officially confirmed, the mere possibility is enough to ignite the imaginations of Cowboys fans and strike a nerve with the Commanders' faithful. McLaurin, who has been one of Washington's most consistent offensive weapons, suddenly being linked to Dallas, has triggered a frenzy of speculation. Could this be the missing piece that finally turns Dak Prescott's passing game into a true powerhouse? Cowboys insiders are reportedly ecstatic at the idea of adding a player with McLaurin's speed, route-running precision, and knack for making clutch catches. If true, this would represent not just a shakeup in the NFC East, but a statement of intent from Jerry Jones' front office. They're not just playing to compete, they're playing to dominate. Meanwhile, Commanders fans are left reeling at the thought of losing a cornerstone of their offense. The team has been through a roller coaster of quarterback situations and coaching changes in recent years, and McLaurin has remained a reliable constant. Losing him would leave a huge hole in the lineup, raising questions about how Washington plans to rebound in the next season. Speculation is rampant. Is this part of a larger rebuild, or is there a secret package coming back in return? Sources hint at a multi-layered deal that could include draft picks or other player exchanges, though nothing has leaked definitively. Social media has erupted, with Cowboys fans already envisioning highlight reels of McLaurin stretching the field and Commanders supporters lamenting the potential loss of their star. Analysts are cautiously optimistic, noting that trades of this magnitude rarely go unnoticed and could have ripple effects throughout the league. Whatever the truth, one thing is certain. If Terry McLaurin does end up in Dallas, the NFL offseason just got a lot more interesting, and the rumor mill isn't cooling down anytime soon. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Dallas Cowboys, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. We always look forward to your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.